Good morning. If you are willing, if you are able, would you please rise for our call to worship? Here today is love, freely available to all, not fragile and intermittent, but God's steadfast and unconditional love. Give us the courage we need. Let God's love shine through us. Here today is love, higher than our loftiest hopes, deeper than the immensities of time and space, God's inclusive love. Give us the hope we need. Let God's love shine through us. We worship in the light of God's steadfast, unconditional, and inclusive love.
And closed, with hearts broken, healed, and healing. We have gathered because in all of us there is that place of longing to know that we are your beloved, O God. Nudge us, prod us, comfort us, disturb us, wake us up to your Spirit's calling. And don't let us go until we have found the blessing of being called your beloved. Amen.
This morning we remember these people as we pray. We pray for the family of Onita Hassler. Onita, a longtime Pullen member, died this past week. Her memorial service will be held in Missouri. She will be remembered by many Pullen folks as the kind and gentle person who held and rocked our babies during Sunday school and worship for many years. We also hold in our prayers Gail Chesson in the death of her uncle Ray Smith. Mr. Smith was 92 years old and lived in Sanibel Island, Florida. We continue to pray for Roger Adkins as he grieves the death of his brother Gary. Melissa requests prayers for her mother Judy Bieber, who has brain cancer. Melissa's parents are members of one of our sister churches in Charlotte, St. John's Baptist. And we continue to pray for Kathy Flanagan as she recovers from cancer surgery. Kathy is now at home. In celebration today, we celebrate the talent and unique gifts of our Pullen children. Last night, 16 kids shared their talent at the first annual Kids Talent Show, while another 10 of their peers and around 60 adults cheered them on. And it was a lot of fun. A delicious meal and fun evening was shared by all. In addition to celebrating our Pullen kids, we also celebrate Pastor Tommy, who did an amazing job emceeing the event. And last but certainly not least, we give thanks for the many Pullen people who represented us at the annual HK on J March yesterday. God, you are the wonderful, loving parent who smiles with joy at each of us, the one we can always count on for comfort and peace when we are anxious, fearful, sad. God, today as I look at you as my loving and wonderful parent, I admit that we are anxious, we are fearful, we are sad. Sad and anxious and fearful that our marginalized siblings across our nation continue to face adversity day in and day out. That we have not learned in 400 years that all have a place at the table. Anxious, fearful, and sad that our elected leaders continue to line their pockets and look out for the wealthy and the powerful. That we have misplaced power in our nation. That we have given a few straight white cis men so much power. That we have stripped away the rights from most of our nation's people. God, we are sad, fearful, and anxious that our elected leaders can get away with outright illegal actions, while how many of our brothers, sisters, siblings die in the streets for simply existing in their own skin. But God, in our anxiety and in our fear and in our sadness, we also hold joy and hope. Joy when we see thousands of people gathered to march. Joy when we have places that we can gather and express ourselves openly and freely with one another. We have hope in a new generation that is far more loving and far more kind than the adults who are in power right now. There is hope that the tide is changing. There is hope when a straight white cis male finally admits, I don't deserve to be here. There is hope when the microphone is passed to a marginalized person and their voice is heard. So God, we come to you today in sadness and fear and anxiety, but we will not lose sight of the hope and the joy of those who are fighting for equal opportunity, for the rights of the marginalized, for those who have yet to be heard. And God, in all of that we give thanks. We read from the Hebrew Scriptures today from Isaiah chapter 58, beginning at verse 1. Shout loudly, don't hold back, raise your voice like a trumpet. Announce to my people their crime, to the house of Jacob their sins. They seek me day after day, desiring knowledge of my ways, like a nation that acted righteously, that didn't abandon their God. They ask me for righteous judgments, wanting to be close to God. Why do we fast and you don't see? Why afflict ourselves and you don't notice? Yet on your fast day, you do whatever you want and oppress all your workers. You quarrel and brawl, and then you fast. You hit each other violently with your fists. You shouldn't fast as you are doing today if you want to make your voice heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I choose? A day of self-affliction, of bending one's head like a reed, and of lying down in mourning clothing and ashes. Is this what you call a fast? A day acceptable to the Lord? Isn't this the fast I choose? Releasing wicked restraints, untying the ropes of a yoke, setting free the mistreated, and breaking every yoke. Isn't it sharing your bread with the hungry and bringing the homeless poor into your house, covering the naked when you see them, and not hiding from your own family? Then your light will break out like the dawn, and you will be healed quickly. Your own righteousness will walk before you, and the Lord's glory will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and God will say, I am here. They will rebuild ancient ruins on your account. The foundations of generations past you will restore. You will be called mender of broken walls, restorer of livable streets.
If this is the fast we would choose, to loose the bonds, to break the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, then our light shall break forth like the dawn. Light shall break forth like the dawn. And our healing shall spring forth quickly. Choose to share our bread, to clothe the poor, to hide not ourselves from our own. Then our light shall break forth like the dawn. Light shall break forth like the dawn. And our healing shall spring forth quickly. And our healing shall spring forth quickly. Then our light shall break forth like the dawn. Then our light shall break forth like the dawn. And our healing shall spring forth quickly. And our healing shall spring forth quickly. If this is the fast we would choose.
Last night I observed this conversation. A kid walked into Finlater Hall and Pastor Tommy called him over excitedly. Said, Colin, are you going to do a somersault tonight? And Colin leaned in closely and he said, Pastor Tommy, it's a forward roll. It was a great night. For many of us, it has been a hard and discouraging week. Those of us who have a certain perspective and understanding of our American democracy are wrestling with feelings of despair and disbelief and anger. We listened Tuesday night to a State of the Union address that was more like a reality TV show than the time-honored ritual of our political institution. On Wednesday, we watched as our nation's elected leaders acquitted the president of impeachment charges that were proven to be true, charges that clearly violated the oath of office of the President of the United States of America. Even by admission, those voting to acquit the president didn't deny that he pressured a foreign country, withholding aid for his own political gain. And before the events of Tuesday and Wednesday, on Monday, we watched with disbelief as the Iowa caucus was thrown into a crisis over errors and inconsistencies in the results of their primary. While we are distracted with these headlines, states all across the nation are enacting regressive policies on voting rights and women's rights and LGBTQ+ rights and basic human rights. Legislative sessions all over our country are weakening public education, food assistance programs for the poor, and environmental protections. Just this week, it was reported that the temperature in Antarctica hit 64.9 degrees, the highest temperature ever recorded on the continent. The record is startling because the last one was set just 5 years ago, and the new one is almost 1 degree higher. Our planet is in crisis. Yesterday, as I marched with others in the annual HK-on-J People's Assembly Moral March, a few folks commented to me that it was hard for them to get up and show up on a cold February morning to march for justice when justice doesn't seem to matter in our nation right now. They expressed a deep feeling of fatigue and frustration that no matter what they do and how hard they advocate for a just and moral society, it doesn't seem to change the direction of our country right now. And I understand that. And I get it. One person asked me, "How do you do it? How do you keep showing up and keeping hope?" What rapidly went through my mind when asked that question was something that my mentor taught me. Mahan Seiler used to say to me on a regular basis, "Nancy, the most important thing in life is to show up. And if you show up, that's half the work." My second thought was, we don't think our way into having hope. We act our way into having hope. The truth, though, is that sometimes I do lose hope. Not as much as I used to. I think that kind of comes with age. I'm more able these days to keep the big picture in mind, even as I understand the grave damage that is being done in our country by a political party that is living and dying by racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, white privilege, and the severe abuse of power. I hold to an image of hope that my brother William Barber gave me some years ago when he said, "Nancy, a dying mule kicks its hardest right before it dies." I hold to the hope that something new is being birthed, and I understand that birthing something new is painful and messy. I am more able these days to rely on a hope that is not dependent on external circumstances of things going my way or the way I think is the right way. Rather, These days, I am relying on a hope that is lived out by faithful people who do choose to rise early on a cold winter morning to march for justice. A hope that is lived out by a community that shows up on a Saturday evening during the UNC Duke basketball game to support the kids who are putting on a talent show. These days, I live by a hope that is practiced in rituals of right relationship, of people taking care of one another, of young families inviting elders into their home for a meal, of a church that celebrates people living out their best and true lives as the gender they identify with, rather than feeling like they have to conform to a false norm in order to just come to church. I hold to a hope these days, my friends, that is practiced in rituals of right relationship, of people who want to do more than just hand out food baggies and bus tickets, but who want to sit around a table with food insecure and housing insecure human beings and hear their stories of struggle and discomfort. Yes, I'm relying on the hope of a people who give of their time to tutor children who need a little extra help with schoolwork. A people who see the value in still gathering to pray and hold sacred space for God's nudging instead of rituals that are simply routine and proper and sanitized and empty of meaning, expected, and require absolutely nothing of us. Which brings me to our text from Isaiah 58. In this pericope, the prophet is called upon to speak to the people about their rituals. Having survived exile, the Israelites now find themselves in a time of rebuilding their lives and their community. And as they go about reestablishing their homeland, the people seem to believe that while they are doing all the right things, especially when it comes to keeping the faith, it is God who is not keeping faith. They think that by fasting, they will please God. And in turn, God will bless them with prosperity. You know, we can't really judge them for this understanding, for they have been formed in this ancient practice, shaped by the rituals of fasting and humbling oneself before God. Surely they must have thought, if I show up on Sunday morning for worship, give my offering, listen to the prayers, amen the preacher every once in a while, and take communion once a month, I have fulfilled my duties as one of the faithful. Thank you, Mark Nance, who is so humble in this moment. You know, it must have been a shock. It must have been a real shock to those people to hear the prophet's strong rebuke of these faithful acts. How could God not be pleased? We're doing exactly what our traditions have taught us to do. But it appears that God is not pleased. And God calls upon the prophet Isaiah to deliver that hard word. Now, what's interesting to me in this text is that God doesn't tell the prophet to go sit down with the people and have a quiet conversation about their rituals. God doesn't instruct the prophet to conduct a series of listening sessions, or send out a survey, or have house meetings, or establish a task group to study their rituals. No. What strikes me about this text is this is not a time for coddling, and it is not a time for sensitive speech. For God tells the prophet with words plain and clear, shout! A full-throated shout. Hold nothing back. A trumpet blast shout. Tell my people what's wrong with their lives, God tells the prophet. Tell them that they're busy at worship and love studying all about me. To all appearances, they're a nation of right-living people, law-abiding, God-honoring. They ask me, what's the right thing to do? And they love having me on their side. But they also complain, God says. Why do we fast and you don't look our way? Why do we show up on Sunday mornings and do what we've been taught to do, humble ourselves, and you don't even notice, God? Well, here's why. The bottom line of your fast days is profit. You drive your employees much too hard. You fast, but at the same time you bicker and fight. You fast, but you swing a mean fist. The kind of fasting you do won't get your prayers off the ground. Do you think this is the kind of fast I'm after? A day to show off your humility? To put on a pious long face and parade around in black? Do you call that fasting? A fast day that I, God, would like? This is the kind of fast that I'm after, God says. To break the chains of injustice. Get rid of the exploitation in the workplace. Free the oppressed, cancel debts. What I'm interested in seeing you do is sharing your food with the hungry, inviting the homeless poor into your homes, putting clothes on the shivering, ill-clad, being available to your own families. Do this, God says, and the lights will turn on, and your lives will turn around at once. Your righteousness will pave your way. The God of glory will secure your passage. Then when you pray, God will answer. You'll call out for help, and God will say, here I am. This is a God who is not messing around with empty rituals. This is a God saying to us, my fast is a whole new way of life and living. It is a daily ritual of practicing right relationships, not a once-a-week ritual sitting in a sanctuary. God's fast is no longer the periodic fast days that serve to punctuate the end of a week. Instead, fasting God's fast is a new set of relationships lived out 7 days a week. The fasting that God is after is a daily fast from domination, from blaming others, from evil speech, from ego-driven actions, entitlements to one's privilege, and blindness to what harms others. It is a fasting to a daily life that practices building and nurturing right relationships for justice and equality, for compassion and kindness and generosity, even when we are fatigued and frustrated and feel despair. When the people choose this fast, they experience light and healing and help and the presence of God. A just relationship with God requires us to have just relationships with one another. Our individual rituals of faith cannot be disconnected from our everyday lives and our relationships with one another and with our neighbors. Only when our rituals nurture right relationships can we begin to repair the breach and restore the streets that we live on and in. Isaiah 58 is calling us to such action, to repair the breaches around us and to restore the streets in our own backyard. So this morning, I am sending out a call to action, a call to a ritual of right relationship with those who are our neighbors. This week, WRAL did a piece on students at North Carolina State University. The piece highlighted a recent study by a committee at NC State that our own Sarah Bowen served on. The study found that 14% of NCSU students experienced food insecurity at some point over the previous month. It also found that 10% of NCSU students experienced homelessness at some point over the previous year. 14% of students at the university that sits right beside us experienced food insecurity last month. And 10% of those students experienced homelessness in the last year. These are our neighbors. These students, many of them coming from families of poverty who are trying to lift themselves out of that poverty and make a better life for themselves and their families, need our fast right now. These, my friends, are the literal streets we live on and in. Streets where college students who are at one of our most elite universities in the state don't have enough food to eat. Students who are couch surfing and living in cars and trying to go to class to better their lives. Is this not the fast God requires of us? To step out of our secure rituals and practice some new rituals of right relationship with these students? Is this not the breach that God is asking us to help repair in this moment? Surely God doesn't need us to appoint a task committee or have listening sessions to decide how we want to respond to hungry students who live right beside of us, some of them in cars. Is not the ritual we need to observe in this moment to go to the grocery store, every grocery store around us, and buy every can of tuna and every jar of peanut butter and every pack of cheese in stock and donate it to the student grocery store where students can go and get the nourishment they need to be able to excel in their studies? Is not the ritual that Isaiah is asking us to practice one of picking up our phone and making a phone call to the university and asking for that person in charge of the new program to connect housing insecure students with families who can host a student in their home for a semester? Do we not have a responsibility to help repair this breach and to restore these very streets that we live on and walk on? Now is not the time to hold back. Now is the time to shout with a loud shout and with the sound of a trumpet that God's people at Pullen Memorial Baptist Church are ready to practice rituals that build right relationships with students at a university whose literal landscape we share. This is a call to action. It is not a call, though, about choosing who we support and who we don't. This call to action is not suggesting that we stop helping one group of food and housing insecure people to help another group of housing and food insecure people. And this call to action is not naive. I don't believe that our jars of peanut butter are going to solve the undergraduate food insecurity problems at North Carolina State University. And if I did, we still have Shaw and Peace and Central and Wake Tech and Meredith and hundreds and thousands of more. What we need is right systems to solve these problems as a larger people who cares for our larger society. But I can't get that fix on a shelf today. And I can go get peanut butter and cans of tuna and packs of cheese. Sometimes, my friends, we have to start with the problem that is right in front of us. We start with the opportunity that is given to us. We start with the door that opens that may not lead to the grand prize, but gets us in proximity to the problems. We never lose sight of the big systemic solutions, but we don't, and we can't wait on them either. This call to action is about a fast that understands until that day when all of us have enough to eat and a safe place to live, none of us are secure, even though we might have our bellies full. And as long as there is a breach in our human relationships, there is repair work that we must do. This, my friends, is the ritual of hope. This is the ritual that keeps us getting up on cold mornings to march for justice when the previous days have left us feeling despair. Our way out of the mess we are in is to keep practicing rituals of right relationship with God and with our neighbors. Today and in the days to come, we are being called not to be a people who despair, but to be a people who hope. And no doubt there will be days when hope seems dim, when you and we tire from our efforts because they seem to not make any difference. Don't give up. Don't give up. Keep practicing your rituals of building right relationships, and I can promise you that the light, your light, our light, will eventually break forth like the dawn, and healing will spring up in the most unexpected places. The ruins of our democracy will be rebuilt, and God's faithful people will be called the repairers of the breach and the restorers of the streets that we live in. We cannot be a people who lose hope. We must be a people of hope. And so I have a dream. I have a dream that all throughout this week, people will bring jars of peanut butter and cans of tuna and packs of cheese and cans of soup. And that when we gather for our ritual worship next Sunday, this chancel will be so full of food that we won't be able to see the floor. Our hope can't fix everything. But our hope and our actions can make a difference. May it be so.
I think we all know that this building and this group of people is such a shining light in our community because of the work that you do and the voice that Nancy is willing to share. Would you give generously so that we can keep doing what we do on a day in and day out and give hope to our community?
here today looking for a church home, if you're here today looking for a church home, be more than glad to welcome you as we sing our hymn this morning. Have a seat for just a moment. Anna, will you come stand with me? We're going to take our time on this one. This is Anna Landis. Anna has grown up in this church. It has only taken Anna 19 years to decide to come to this moment and officially join this church. Now, that was a record that Anna was trying to set. She wanted to be the longest attending person before joining in the history of Pullen. And I am bestowing that honor upon her today. Because while there might have been others who have waited a bit longer, there has been no one who has been consistent in their attendance and waited this long. And so Anna was going to join last week, but I didn't give a verbal invitation. And she came up to me afterwards and she said, "You didn't invite me to join." And I said, "You're always invited to join." So what a joyful day this is. I know for Nancy and Gary, they're here supportive.
so proud of their daughter, and we certainly are proud of you, Anna, and all that you mean to this church and what you are giving back to this youth group right now as one of their adult leaders. It makes my heart just feel so full to know that the program meant so much to you as a youth coming through and changed your life in ways that you want to help these young people coming through now have that same experience. But you offer so many other gifts to us, and your light shines so bright. And we are so blessed by your presence and by your gifts. And so I know that it is your intent to come to this moment to say that you want to continue to live in this covenant with all of these beautiful people who have nurtured you and cared for you and loved you and given you the space you need to grow up and be yourselves. And in turn, you have loved us and given us second chances when we needed second chances. And you have challenged us and comforted us. And it is truly a relationship of mutual respect. And so if this is the covenant you are wanting to make official on this day, would you say, I do?
Yes, 19 years later, I do.
And you, the Pullen people, if you're willing to do what you've been doing all these years with Anna, to welcome her officially in as an official member where she says, now I can vote. And yes, you can vote now. To allow her to keep shining her light, to guide us on our way, for us to help guide her way, for us to continue to be family with one another, to love one another in faithfulness to God. If you're willing to make that covenant with Anna, will you say, we do? And we have for 19 years. We're going to say our welcome new member. You just listen to this. This is our love for you. Striving to and give Anna your love and hugs and well wishes and speak to her. So please do so.
Let us stand for our benediction. And before we do so, greet the persons around you with the words, we shall not lose hope. We shall not lose hope. I'm going to invoke pastor privilege this morning because I would like to say a happy birthday to one of my former colleagues, Gretchen Jordan. Gretchen was the Minister of Education at Binkley when I was your Minister of Education years ago. And Gretchen is here worshiping with us today on her birthday. And so, Gretchen, happy birthday to you and for your faithfulness and all that you have meant to the larger Triangle community. Thank you. Thank you. As you come this week to bring your peanut butter and tuna and cheese, just tell the receptionist that you need to leave something in the sanctuary, and the space will be open all week for you to bring those items. I'm serious. I'm not joking. And then next week, as a part of our worship, as we go forth, we will take our items to the campus grocery store where they will be shelved because they're facing empty shelving right now. So anytime you want to come this week between 8:30 and 4:30, you can come and just bring your items into the sanctuary. Wow. You are amazing. You are such beautiful people. You do this work every day. I know it. I know that you practice rituals of right relationships every single day. And I just wanted to stop in with you this morning, as they say, to give you some hope and encouragement. And I hope you've received it. Go forth and let your light break forth like the dawn.
Then our light shall break forth like